Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Workshop 12. And this is a continuation of our PhD seminar series in business management under the theme of navigating the PhD terrain. We have been discussing a number of interesting things. Today in Workshop 12, we handle the topic shaping a sustainable PhD learning ecology archetype. Today, we deal with shaping a sustainable PhD learning ecology archetype. And one of the books that I want you to look out for and read is a book that is published by Bennett, R. 2018, The Ecological University, A Feasible Utopia, published in London and New York by Routledge. If possible, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to read another book called Bengtson S. 2016, Doctoral Supervision, Organization and Dialogue, ladies and gentlemen. And it is published by Aarhus University Press. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this Workshop 12. And I hope you have benefited from the previous workshops that we've been holding. And as you may have seen already, we have gone through 11 workshops under the theme of navigating the PhD terrain. And this is the 12th. And the 12th makes us understand what we call shaping a sustainable PhD learning ecology. And this is very important, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I just want to give you an outline. Again, this topic, as you can see, is a little bit lengthy. And we shall break it into two workshops, Workshop 12 and Workshop 13. But however, the outline for the entire workshop, for the entire topic is, I will be able to take you through what a doctoral ecology is. I will take you through Scenario 1, Scenario 2, Scenario 3, and Scenario 4. And Scenario 1 is the disciplinary, or what we call the knowledge context. The second one is what we call the institutional or system, what we call systemic context. And the third one is what we call the workplace stroke cultural context. And the fourth one is what we call the person stroke life world context, ladies and gentlemen. And that's the PhD learning ecology. And we want to create and shape a sustainable PhD learning ecology. Otherwise, you can be split into pieces. And you can easily fail, especially when it becomes apparently difficult for these learning ecologies to cohabit, ladies and gentlemen. So it's quite important for us to go through this learning ecology, especially try to relate the disciplinary or the knowledge context to the institutional or systemic context and the workplace, because I know most of you are working, and then the personal life, that's what we call the work-life balance and the PhD balance. And these things are not very easy. And if you are a lady and you are participating and then you have demands from all spheres, you may actually fail. If you're a gentleman and you also have too many responsibilities in all those spheres, you are bound to fail. So that is what we call the learning ecology, classified into those four. When we are done with that, we shall move to our second aspect, which is how those four domains of the doctoral ecology model intersect and influence each other in doctoral education and practice. And then, of course, here we'll have an opportunity to go through the unconscious incompetence, or what we call the unconscious competence. And of course, we shall look at that as a framework for conceptualizing support within doctoral ecology. And then we shall go to the unconscious incompetence. And later on, we go to the unconscious competence, ladies and gentlemen. Then later on, we shall reach a conclusion and look at what we call the final key messages for the doctoral student and for the administrators of the doctoral degree, ladies and gentlemen. So in this workshop 12, ladies and gentlemen, I want to again welcome you and thank you for turning up in big numbers, as I can see, because you are interested in learning. And I think we are moving together in this learning exercise. I can tell you that I'm also learning a lot. As you are learning, I'm also learning. And I know at the end of the day, I'll turn out to be a better, probably, supervisor in the process, ladies and gentlemen. Now, in this lecture, I've already given the outline, and allow me to go straight into the subject of what we are addressing. Now, when we talk about doctoral learning ecology, we need to understand what this doctoral learning ecology is all about. Now, of course, the main idea behind the notion of doctoral ecologies is that the doctoral journey takes place within and across several domains of learning simultaneously. So you will not have an opportunity moment when you are discussing knowledge issues and then the workplace issues do not come in, the cultural issues do not come in, the institutional issues do not come in. No, it's not possible. That world is never there. So you will encounter these things at the same time, and as a PhD student you need to learn how to overcome these things. And as you can see, right, we are looking at that doctoral journey that you are undertaking, right, and at the same time understanding that that journey, the doctoral journey, takes place within and across several domains of learning simultaneously. And the main theoretical and conceptual inspiration, ladies and gentlemen, comes from the work of Ronald Bennett, 2018, and that is one of the books that I've just given you on the Ecological University, right? London and New York, and published by Routledge, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this concept of the Ecological University explains the ways knowledge creation and learning and higher education curriculum and institutions, ladies and gentlemen, are typically embedded within a wider range of the disciplinary, institutional, societal, political, and existential contexts. So if you are talking about the concept of ecological university, right, then you start talking about knowledge creation, and as a PhD you are supposed to contribute knowledge to a particular discipline, a particular area. So the knowledge creation, right, and your learning as a PhD student to become an independent researcher, ladies and gentlemen, and the higher education in general, higher education curriculum, and of course institutions, right, they will quite often be embedded in a wide range of contexts. And these contexts are disciplinary in nature, the discipline where you want to contribute knowledge, institutional, that's really systemic issues, the institution where you are undertaking your PhD, societal, because you have a community that you report to every day when you go back home, and of course the organization where you work, political, all over you have political issues, and this could be institutional politics, right, in the organization where you work, the organization where you are pursuing your PhD, and of course other issues that relate to your very nature as an individual, and this is really existential. And these are existential issues, ladies and gentlemen. Now, in relation to doctoral education, ladies and gentlemen, the doctorate as we know it today is embedded within a range of nested contexts, and that this identity trajectory of doctoral researchers needs to be understood as simultaneously belonging to several zones or what we call domains of learning, ladies and gentlemen. And in this workshop, our aim is to make these four main learning domains in doctoral education visible and tangible so that you work around and through the ropes of these domains, ladies and gentlemen. Now, firstly, ladies and gentlemen, the doctorate takes place within the learning domain of the discipline, and you must understand very well. Now here, the doctoral researchers strive to acquire, let alone master, the fundamental and key theories and methods relevant to the field and research project more specifically. So you will struggle to get that technical knowledge right. You will struggle to acquire, you will struggle to master, right, the fundamental theories which certainly underpins your study and in your discipline, right, the relevant methods, and that's why you go through the methodologies, and of course what you call the philosophy of knowledge, because your work must be underpinned by a certain philosophy, ladies and gentlemen, and this must be able to be seen. We must be able to see these things in your work right from the introduction up to the end, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, as you can see in this perspective, learning within the disciplinary domain also includes, for instance, developing and mastering one's own research practices, and of course being able to present such practices through the genres and the craftsmanships and literacies of writing. So you will be required to write and write and write and write, ladies and gentlemen. And that is your responsibility, because you cannot learn this exercise of doing research. Research is a practice-based, an action-oriented activity. Right, I mean, it's like driving. I may take you to a driving school and teach you how to drive. I give you exams and you pass and even get 100% or 90%. That doesn't make you a very nice driver. No. You probably do not know how to drive until we test for your skill of driving. And that's why you'll understand that under learning, if you follow the Bloom's taxonomy of learning, we've got what we call the cognitive, right? And I hope you remember the cognitive as domain of learning. Cognition, that level of cognitive. Then we go to the second level, which we call the affective level of learning, and then the psychomotor level of learning. So when you talk about research, ladies and gentlemen, we are more or less specifically focusing on the psychomotor level of learning. So it's research plus, it's practice-based. We must be able to do something, ladies and gentlemen. So within the disciplinary domain, doctoral researchers generally find support in the disciplinary experience, right? Disciplinary expertise, the professors are there and they'll take you through that. And then because these professors have a wealth of experience in the research, and then you have colleagues, they have colleagues at the university who can also help give you this kind of information and assistance. Then that doesn't seem to be a major issue, ladies and gentlemen, right? But of course, one of the things that we need to understand here is that as the most typical port of call for support is via doctoral supervision, because you'll be supervised. The supervisory team provides feedback, you know that very well, raises ideas, engages doctoral researchers in a constructive and critical learning dialogue around their research projects, and that happens quite often. And secondly, the doctorate takes place within the learning domains of the institutional system and infrastructure. And here the doctoral researcher tries to become aware of the accepted rules and regulations of the local graduate school. So as a student, you need to know the rules of the game, and these are institutional and they are systemic in nature. And of course, these commonly include things like the thesis formats, or monograph, or article-based thesis length, range, whether you have followed scope, and whether you have followed a certain style of referencing or not, and so forth. And there may also be a requirement from the graduate school for doctoral researchers, and here I mean PhD students, to undertake a certain number of training courses in research methodology, just like the courses we've been going through, like philosophy of knowledge, research methods, qualitative research methods, quantitative research methods, etc. And of course, you have to undertake a number of trainings so that you fulfill the requirements for one level, and so that you're allowed to move to the next level. And of course, sometimes if you must go and attend certain courses from another university and then transfer credits, That is probably within the rules and regulations of the university, and those are systemic in nature. And within this domain, ladies and gentlemen, doctoral researchers also become aware of the various rules, right? So PhD students will be made aware of the rules. For example, when to apply for what we call, taking audited courses, and of course, those courses that are considered to be prerequisites and so forth. And if they must make presentations at conferences, they must also ask for permission. If the university has money to fund some of the activities that are done by the PhD students, then you have to go through certain formalities. If you must get leave during this particular time, when you are doing your PhD, then the formalities also exist. And then also you have regulations surrounding what we call sick leave. And of course, there are those acceptable issues at the university, like financial issues, like medical issues, like social issues, etc. The university will give you guidelines on how to handle those things and how to work through those things. And of course, thirdly, the doctorate that you are undertaking as a PhD student takes place within the learning domain of the workplace culture, and sometimes referred to as the process of enculturation. And this domain covers the progression in the informal learning of doctoral students, becoming part of the research team, or becoming part of the program, becoming part of the department and the faculty. And this is very true because wherever PhD students are undertaking their PhDs, they are actually asked by the university where they are studying from to participate and teach or facilitate on the various activities of the university. And they may be given courses to teach at the undergraduate level, or masters, or even some research to supervise or projects to supervise at the master's level and the undergraduate level, ladies and gentlemen. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, becoming part of a research team or program or department of that particular university means a number of things. It means becoming aware of certain, often tacit and implicit social norms for how to behave, as well as cultural values concerning proper and improper collegial conduct, ladies and gentlemen. Now, by becoming an active member of the community of practice for a group unit, group, or probably department or doctoral group, in this case, a PhD student gains access to important, ladies and gentlemen, networks and resources. And of course, this is very, very important because we need to understand these issues very well. If we don't understand these things very well, it will be very hard for us to continue progressing, ladies and gentlemen. Now, of course, as you can see here, it means that for you as a student, you need to think through this process very well, and then also get to know what is generally acceptable at the university so that you don't get into problems. And this is very, very, very important. And of course, it means that by becoming an active member of the community of practice for a group or that department, you form and you join very important networks, and very important resources are probably needed for you to continue working. And of course, we believe that the mentorship exercise becomes a little bit possible, and of course, meaning that a number of things must be done in this case, ladies and gentlemen. So, therefore, as you can see in this case, the doctorate takes place within the learning domain of the personal and wider societal life world. So as you can see, a number of things are involved, and therefore we must probably know how to navigate through these things. Otherwise, we will not be able to survive, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, as you can see here, the doctoral researcher's concern is not necessarily directed towards the quality of the thesis and the rules and the regulations of the graduate school, because these are known anyway, right? They are known, and of course, people know exactly what to do in this perspective. Now, of course, this has implications, ladies and gentlemen, meaning that we must really work towards achieving results. Now, of course, as you can see, and from our discussions, it could be that the questions that arise in the minds of the doctoral students or PhD students are probably have a personal perspective, and these are existential issues, issues of life, life meaning of life offered by the doctoral journey, and of course how to cope with and tackle the inevitable uncertainties and pressure following independent and demanding research processes, ladies and gentlemen. Now, within this domain, ladies and gentlemen, the doctoral researchers may strive to, as you can see, the doctoral researcher may strive to maintain a sustainable work-life balance, right? And of course, this is something that he has to work on and then ensure that he goes through it. And of course, you have to maintain that sustainable work-life balance, and even sometimes manage to work part-time or full-time on the side of another professional context, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, at the end of the day, as you do this, you must maintain the personal integrity and authenticity when going through the doctorate, and also be able to face challenges in the private and perhaps also societal life at the same time. So the pressure mounted on the PhD student is enormous, and you need to learn to go through this. And therefore the learning domain is, ladies and gentlemen, the learning domain is linked to doctoral researchers, so the PhD student, finding support and help from professional networks beyond the institution. For example, voluntary work, context, and interaction with family and friends, ladies and gentlemen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'll attempt to show you on the screen here, as you can see, a doctoral learning ecology. A doctoral learning ecology is modeled using 4 specific things, which I have already talked about. And these 4 things, ladies and gentlemen, include the discipline, right? And the discipline, as you can see on the diagram here, on the screen, discipline gives you knowledge. And the discipline is where you intend to contribute knowledge. And for you to contribute knowledge, you must be on top of everything, and you must stand on the shoulders of the tallest people in that discipline. So that means the scholarly work that you really must review is enormous, ladies and gentlemen. So you have the discipline, and that's knowledge. And here, for us to summarize, as you can see on the screen, we talk about theories and methods, the research practice, critical feedback that you receive, craftsmanship, the genre, and the literacy that you gain from this. And that is under discipline, ladies and gentlemen. Now, under institution, where we have systemic issues, we have what we call formal requirements, right? Now, when we talk about formal requirements, it means that you must know the rules of the game, ladies and gentlemen. Then, in terms of the courses, the PhD courses that you have to undertake in order to fulfill the requirements for the award of the degree, or to move from one level to another, and we call that the PhD courses that you must study, because you must get credits, you must earn credits. So you must have earned credits which are transferable, even if you undertake these studies elsewhere. Then, of course, there is teaching and the workload that you are going to experience, especially if the university has that kind of requirement that you must teach. And then funding, and of course leave and illness, and what you have to do. That is under institution, and these are system, and we call them systemic issues. The third one is the person, right? Or maybe before you go to person, let's look at the workplace, the third one. And here we bring in cultural issues, So here you must prioritize, you must organize work. Remember there are what we call departmental politics, community networks, career trajectory, all those things fall under workplace. And then the fourth one is the person, you yourself as a PhD student, and here we talk about meaning. So you start asking yourself a number of questions. These are existential issues, right? Is this what I really want? Then you start dealing with issues of uncertainty, crises, and joys. Then you start looking at issues of obtaining work-life balance, issues of personal integrity, issues of growth, etc. So that is really our diagram that has 4 major issues, and I'm sure you can see it there. You've got discipline, you've got institution, you've got workplace, and then you have got the individual when he starts looking at personal issues, right? And of course, there we deal with issues of really existential issues, really, as you can see. Now, for us, ladies and gentlemen, in this workshop, as you can see, I know you are getting tired a little bit, but certainly I have to go through 4 scenarios, and I'll not take long, really, before I complete these 4 scenarios. Now, in order, ladies and gentlemen, to understand the model that I've just given you there, in order to understand that model and be able to conceptualize the model very well, you have to appreciate the fact that the concept of doctoral learning ecology may play out in practice, and therefore you are likely to be a victim or to be subjected to pressure that comes from these 4 areas that I've just mentioned. Now, you will consider I'm going to give you 4 short narratives as viewed from the doctoral researcher's perspective, as viewed from the PhD student perspective. And that's where we are starting, and that's where we shall end. We shall not really go into other people, your supervisors, the institution, etc. But how do the PhD students view these ecologies that I've just talked about? Now, those ecologies that you have just seen on the screen, and we can still have them on the screen here, ladies and gentlemen, those 4 ecologies that you see there, the doctoral learning ecologies, right, can be viewed by a student in the following way. And the first way is what we call, it's actually scenario 1, the disciplinary knowledge context, right? So how do the students, PhD students, view this? I'm going to use an example of a PhD student who went through her own pressures. Now, this student is called Elizabeth. Elizabeth was almost a year into her PhD studies, but was still struggling with acquiring an in-depth understanding of some of the core concepts from the central theories she drew from. So remember, this is a PhD student who has enrolled and has taken 1 year on the PhD student, and she's still struggling with the PhD concepts, or what we call core concepts in the area where she wants to undertake a PhD. And remember, she had enrolled on the thesis only PhD. She was not supposed to undergo teaching or tutorship. So 1 year, and by the way, as I speak this, some of you have gone through your PhD for 2 years, 3 years, even 4 years, ladies and gentlemen, but you are still grappling to understand the core concepts and the central theories that you are going to use in your PhD, and you probably don't understand those theories. Now, this Elizabeth that I'm talking about, despite reading widely and thoroughly into a comprehensive corpus of literature, she felt that the more she read, right, the harder it was for her to find her way into the theoretical landscape and to describe the concept using her own voice. So Elizabeth has this challenge, right? Remember, we are talking about the doctoral learning ecology, right? First of all, you've got demands at the workplace, right? Two, you've got the disciplinary demands, ladies and gentlemen, and you've got systemic demands, and these are institutional. But you also have existential, or the personal issues, life's meaning, right, in this case. So Elizabeth is pushed on the wall, pushed hard on the wall. Now, she kept saying to herself that if you could just read the text one more time, all the pieces in the intellectual puzzle would fall into place. So she kept on reading and reading and reading. So this Elizabeth met her supervisors. But both her supervisors had on many occasions suggested that she pauses in her reading and starts writing up instead. But remember, she kept on reading, and she thought that if she could read more and more and more, her ideas will fall in place and she'll be able to understand the study very well. So, but the supervisors insisted that pause, and they said to the student, pause, right, stop reading now and start writing up something. So through the writing process, right, the supervisors believed that this student will be able to discover her way into theoretical semantics. And that was the belief of the supervisors. So, however, it was not until her main supervisor set her the task of writing a short essay on two of the main concepts for the next supervision meeting that things changed. So the supervisor now, the main supervisor, the lead supervisor, told the student, I want you to go and write 2 pages, right, or 3 pages on this main, on these concepts, core concepts. And these are the things we are going to discuss in our next meeting. So when the supervisor, the main supervisor suggested, then things changed for Elizabeth, ladies and gentlemen. Elizabeth initially found writing her thoughts down in an academic form very hard, and she came close to giving up the idea. After following her supervisor's advice to write some words, 500 words every day for a week, to her delight, she experienced a breakthrough on the 3rd day. As she was writing, she suddenly found that her focus had been sharpened, leading her to find her own words and enabled her to present her insights from the theories using her own voice, ladies and gentlemen. So, Elizabeth is spending more time writing than reading, formally and informally, slowly and with certainty, ladies and gentlemen. This Elizabeth was able to gradually develop her own independent voice within the discipline, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to talk to you who, I want to talk to you participants attending this workshop today. Since you are doctoral students, yes, I know you have read a lot, and you enjoy reading, and you think that you will discover more things through the process of reading, and that's very good. But also start constructing and putting ideas down, and then use those ideas for the meetings that you are going to have with your supervisors to have an in-depth discussion and critique and analysis of what you have. And this is what we call scenario 1, the disciplinary or knowledge context, ladies and gentlemen. I know there's a lot that we have to go through, right, but we have to work very hard for us to be able to accomplish that. Remember, we are looking at the doctoral learning ecology and how the students, PhD students, actually view that learning ecology. Remember, a PhD student, right, is subjected to pressure coming from the disciplinary, from the discipline, right, and she must be able to contribute knowledge. Then too, we have the culture, because she or he is asked to participate in the school activities, university activities. The student is actually more or less teaching and supervising students. There is pressure that comes with that. As I showed you in the previous diagram, if you recall very well, And then you have another pressure which is coming from the institution where he's doing his PhD, and you must follow the rules, the regulations, and so forth. Timelines are there, the pressures are there, and we call them institutional or systemic kind of pressures. And then lastly, you have got what we call life's meaning, and these are personal existential issues, ladies and gentlemen. So that is how Elizabeth managed to go through the issue of the discipline, right? Because she kept on reading and reading and reading, but she was able to overcome. So if you are there in the audience, ladies and gentlemen, and you are pursuing your PhD and you are at this level, learn from the example of Elizabeth, ladies and gentlemen. So let's now move to the next scenario, scenario 2, the institutional, or what we call the systemic context. And I'll also give you an example of somebody who has managed to navigate through this process and be able to find a breakthrough in what he was doing. And this is an example of John. John is a typical student who joined the university some time back on his PhD program, ladies and gentlemen. So as you can see, as I narrate the experience of John, John was planning his mandatory research stay in the foreign country. In fact, as he was pursuing his PhD from one of the universities, he also got an assignment to go and join another university and work on his assignment. So he wanted to continue working on his assignment as he was abroad, ladies and gentlemen. So John was planning his mandatory research stay abroad, as you can see, which he had agreed with his supervisor would be well placed in the beginning of the second year of his PhD. So this was through the agreement of John and the supervisor. And so as you can see here, John had also discovered by chance that apart from the travel expenses and the fee to the host institution, the graduate school did not provide enough funding to pay for his accommodation during this period. So he had planned for all that, but the university was not providing sufficient money to cater for his accommodation. Now further, he had hoped that he could join one of the training programs offered by the doctoral researchers at the host institution in order to meet the course credits, because he wanted to undertake this course from the foreign university and transfer the credits back home, because this was required, ladies and gentlemen. Now, however, since it did not seem feasible that his own university would accept the training programs offered by the foreign university, it meant that he would have to rearrange his plans concerning when to obtain the credits needed. So the university certainly had debated, and they were not in favor of the university where he wanted to undertake these credits from. So they would not really accept the credits. And besides, the university was not willing to give him money to go and support his stay abroad. So this series of events had implications for his timeline, as it would alter his plans for completing the data collection process. You know, you cannot really start collecting data unless you've gone through your serious research methodology classes and understand the implications of those things, design an instrument together with your supervisor, seek approval, and then go to the field. So John's supervisor and supervisors, because they are usually more than one, were generally very supportive around disciplinary matters, and we are glad to help John, ladies and gentlemen. However, the rules of the graduate school had changed a lot since they did their own PhDs, and it was difficult for them to remember all the new procedures and technical steps. So the supervisors could not offer the information that's required and the technical support, because the rules of the game of doing a PhD had changed. So John decided to take ownership of the process himself by setting up meetings with the PhD administration unit So he had always tried to avoid getting too entangled with them, as he could not see how they could assist him in his research. Now, during these meetings, however, ladies and gentlemen, he realized that many doctoral researchers before him had gone through similar challenges, right? But initially, these things were unknown to him. Now, to his surprise, he received a lot of good advice from these very helpful administrative staff, right? And he was able to work around these things and be able to embark on his studies. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see here, these challenges will always be there, right? But you need to, again, be mindful and gain support of the administration and pick information. Let me take you to scenario number 3, and that is really the workplace or the cultural context and the implications and the meaning that the students gain from this institutional, what we call the, sorry, not institutional, but the workplace, the cultural context. And I'll still give you an example of one of the doctoral students' experience, ladies and gentlemen. So this doctoral student that I'm going to pick under the workplace cultural context is called Henry Wright. Henry was halfway through his doctoral studies, but started to lose steam and interest, ladies and gentlemen, in his own research into cultures and identities. So Henry was undertaking a study on cultures and identities, but halfway through the program, Henry started to lose steam into his own study of cultures and identities. Remember, I'm talking about the workplace cultural context, and this gentleman was working on this. Now, despite being a talented researcher, jobs within academia were extremely limited, and the few available jobs were either short-term or what we call project-bound positions, often working for senior researchers outside his area of interest. So he was working on cultures and identities, but the senior researchers he was working with were addressing different things which are totally detached from what he was doing. So Henry loses steam along the way. Now he felt more and more distant from his surrounding workplace, community, and almost none of his colleagues, previous professional networks of friends or family seemed especially swayed or caught up in the main argument, which he thought was quite original and bold. So as he was working on cultures and identities, he thought really had a very strong point, but none of his colleagues, right, and professional networks and so forth really were drawn towards his topic. So because certainly he's working with researchers who are dealing with other things other than his own, which is culture and identity. So they're not interested in even hearing what he's saying. Now, one day Henry, as he was speaking to, he actually decided to speak to another doctoral researcher at a conference which he attended with a number of others. When he talked to the doctoral students, things changed. He actually changed his view on how to communicate and find new energy for his research. So during this conference, ladies and gentlemen, Henry, as I've already said, met a fellow doctoral researcher who narrated, ladies and gentlemen, her ordeal on what she had gone through. So she told Henry that she kept communicating her own research in career ontologies, because this lady had worked on a concept called career ontology. So she kept on communicating her own research in career ontologies through various media for a very long time. Ever since she started, she had tried to communicate. She had written, for instance, newspaper columns on career ontologies. She had also communicated and written online blog posts, ladies and gentlemen. She had also tried open access journals and essays and social media posts, and And this lady now narrated to Henry and said, ever since she started working on her PhD work, she has been trying to persuade people to understand what she's working on. And this lady tells Henry that over the last 2 years, she has managed to build up strong and greatly diverse professional networks. She then received, after doing this, after managing to build up that network, she then received several job offers from companies and organizations she never thought would be interested in career philosophy, ladies and gentlemen. So now, as you can see, she's convinced that her highly specialized research really touched people and they could change society and career agents in the future. So as you can see, Henry changed his perspective, his thinking about this element. And therefore, Henry now has gained steam to continue working on his work. So let me now look at the fourth one as I close, ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of time. Now the fourth element, which we call scenario 4, is the personal, or what we call the person, the life world context. And this is what we call the existential context, the person, right? The person doing a PhD, the PhD student, and the life world context, right? And these must be matched and must be understood, and you must find a proper balance, right? Because you are an individual, and there is a world, right, in which you are certainly embroidered in, and then you must find ways of really managing. Now, I'm going to give you an example of another PhD student who has successfully gone through this process, right, and who has managed to master the art and complete her PhD program. Now, this lady is called Leah, right? Now, Leah gave birth to a son, Jonas, 2 years into her doctoral studies. 2 years into her doctorate, she gave birth to a child. And she has now been on maternity leave for 10 months and is about to start up on her doctoral project again. Now, Jonas, and this is the young kid, has started going to a nursery where he spends 4 to 5 hours a day, but he is often with a typical illness, right? Very young children get when starting in nurseries or daycare institutions. So her partner, I mean now Leah's partner is very supportive, and they share parenting responsibilities by taking turns staying at home when Jonas is ill. However, the situation made it difficult for Leah to maintain focus and momentum in her research because she has too many disturbances, right? And she can't concentrate, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, I'm talking about existential issue. The personal and the work life and institutional life context, ladies and gentlemen. So this is an existential issue, right? So the situation made it difficult. The situation that Leah is going through, the situation she's going through, and she went through, made it difficult for Leah to maintain focus and momentum on her research. Now, her fellow doctoral researchers from the peer group she was a part of before going on leave for what we call maternity leave, have now all completed their doctoral studies. And a few of them are in the very final phase of writing up and have little opportunity to meet up, ladies and gentlemen. Now this lady Leah, right, as you are listening, my fellow participants of this workshop, right, this lady called Leah feels a bit distant with a slight alienation towards her own research project after having been away for so long. Her supervisors seem to struggle with getting back into the loop of her thinking, even though they do what they can do to support and help Leah with regaining a firm grasp on the structure and focus of the thesis. Now, fortunately, ladies and gentlemen, Leah seems to have found a solution right now. As you can see, Leah, while she has been away on leave, right, a new postdoctoral student, Sandra, has been employed at the same department. Now, this Sandra is someone who has recently gone through a very similar situation a year ago. So during the time she herself was completing her own thesis following maternity leave, Sandra was able, in ways, right, her own supervisors and peers have not managed to do so, right. Sandra was able to provide Leah with very specific advice on how to pick up the research focus and the common thread in the main argument, little by little, as you can see. So Sandra has been very helpful, very instrumental, ladies and gentlemen, to help Leah to refocus and continue with her studies. So, ladies and gentlemen, I told you that I'm moving towards the end to close, and let me end with Leah again. I want to tell you, additionally, this lady called Sandra was able to offer suggestions to Leah on how Leah could possibly balance completing her doctoral research against maintaining what we call work-life balance for her family's sake. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you that I will end at that note, and I want to thank you very much for attending this 12th workshop under PhD seminar series in business management, and our theme is still navigating the PhD terrain. This workshop has focused on shaping, on the topic that is shaping. This topic is shaping a sustainable PhD learning ecology archetype. And I want to tell you that in this workshop, we have dealt with what a doctoral learning ecology is. I gave you a diagram that represents those 4 doctoral learning ecologies, but for purposes of reminding you what they are, we have the disciplinary, what we call the knowledge context, we have the institutional or systemic context, and we have the workplace, what we call the cultural context, and then we've got the person, life, world context. This deals with existential issues. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in our next workshop, I want to show you how those 4 domains of the doctoral learning ecologies, right, the ones you've seen, influence each other in doctoral education practice. And that's what I'll look at, and then I'll give you a conclusion, ladies and gentlemen. So I want to invite you to join us in our workshop 13, when we shall be dealing with the 4 domains that I've just talked about, the 4 doctoral learning ecologies, how they influence each other in doctoral education practice. I want to thank you very much for attending this workshop. Stay well, stay safe, bye.